Throughout history, nothing good has ever followed the phrase, "we need to talk," especially when it's followed by the full name of one's spouse. When Greg became Gregory, I knew the final chapter had begun. The private investigator I hired looked like a detective from a 1950s black and white film. He bugged the hotel room where my wife, Carol, stayed with her boss, John Hoffman, the recently promoted Executive Vice President of Sales at Home First Enterprises, the friendly competitor to big box retailers. The photos revealed Mr. Hoffman getting friendly with my wife in at least 4 different positions. From that moment, I devoted every waking hour to planning my revenge. The key was to maintain a normal facade until I was prepared to unleash a storm on these deceitful people. The next week dragged on painfully. Carol became increasingly tight-lipped about her workday, which had previously been a major subject of our nightly conversations. Each day she grew more distant, but I didn't back down. "Did anything interesting happen today? Who did you have lunch with? How's your new boss doing?" Carol would give vague answers and change the subject. Our evenings turned eerily quiet. My investigator had followed them enough to know that their assignments always occurred during long Friday lunches. Hoffman would leave for a customer call at 10:45, and Carol would sneak out 10 minutes later, claiming a chiropractor appointment. They would meet at a business motel on the interstate. We had enough evidence to make their lives hell in divorce court. Everything was ready: the papers, the plan, and the ammunition. It was time to strike. I arrived at Home First Enterprises just 5 minutes after Carol had left. I approached Maria, the receptionist, and asked her to let my wife know I was there to take her out for lunch. "I'm sorry, Mr. Eaton, but your wife just left for her doctor." "Doctor?" I asked. "She has an appointment every Friday at 11:30. She skips lunch some days, but she takes a long one every Friday." I nodded, pretending it was new information. The day before, I had bought a prepaid phone so I could call her from an unfamiliar number. It was the last week of the quarter, and Carol would have to answer to avoid losing a sale that could affect her bonus. "Good afternoon, Carol Eaton speaking." Her voice was sweet, almost melodic, just like a salesperson's. "Is everything okay?" she asked. I could barely speak. "What do you mean?" I stammered. "I tried to surprise you by dropping by and taking you to lunch, but Maria said you had a doctor's appointment. Are you all right?" I struggled to sound concerned. "I'm fine. It was just a routine adjustment with the chiropractor," she replied, her voice tight. I could tell she was angry, and I hoped that feeling carried over into her affair. "That's strange, because I ran into Dr. Wilch a couple of hours ago. He said he hadn't seen you in over a year and asked if you were cheating on him. When did you switch chiropractors?" I paused, hoping for a reaction. She said nothing. "Could you at least tell me who our new bone crusher is?" I added. "I don't have time for this nonsense right now. We'll talk later," she snapped before hanging up. Like every Friday night, we ordered pizza, and tonight was no different. I was paying the delivery boy when Carol drove her sleek black BMW into the garage. "Perfect timing," I said. "I'm not feeling well. I'm going to lie down for a bit." Carol mumbled something, then rushed upstairs. The next sound was the bathroom door slamming. 3 hours later, when I joined her in bed, I pressed her one last time. "Why are you being so secretive about the doctor? What aren't you telling me?" I was relentless. "Carol, I'm sick with worry about you. Please tell me what you're hiding." "Stop nagging me," she snapped. "I told you there's nothing wrong. It's just been a long day and I'm exhausted. We'll talk tomorrow." I struggled to sleep, hearing her quietly crying into her pillow. I'm sure she barely slept, and I couldn't help but wonder if Udo had slept better the night before he killed his father. Saturday, Carol became a different person, the woman from hell. She would have kicked a dog if we had one. We never had the promised conversation about the doctor. Every time I tried to bring it up, Carol would avoid it. She managed to steer clear of me most of the day, but I caught up with her after lunch. Pretending everything was fine, I told her we had 6 p.m. reservations at Antonis, her favorite restaurant. "Maybe that will help you get out of the funk that's taken your smile," I suggested. She didn't react, just stared blankly and shrugged. At 5, I found her sitting on our bed, staring at the wall. "I got you a surprise," I said, handing her a box from Neiman Marcus. She didn't open it. I stood there, feeling awkward, not knowing what to do next. "I hope you'll wear it tonight." When she came downstairs, I told her how stunning she looked in her new dress. "I had planned to save these for a special moment, but it seems you need them now." I handed Carol a box wrapped in paper. She ripped off the wrapping and opened the jewelry box, beginning to cry. "They'll look perfect with your new dress," I said, as the pearls shimmered. Dinner passed in silence. She spoke so quietly that the waitress had trouble hearing her order. Even after 3 vodka gimlets, she didn't seem to relax. Most of her meal ended up in a doggy bag. As we arrived at the garage, she didn't wait for me to open the car door. She was out of her seat before I even unbuckled. She stopped, turned, and said, "Thank you." It was the first thing she had said in over 2 hours. I watched her go up the stairs and lock herself in the master bathroom. Quietly, I tiptoed up and listened at the door. As expected, she was talking to Hoffman, probably seeking his reassurance that they would be together soon. I retired to my den, waiting for what would happen next. I took out a small bottle from my suit pocket and swallowed a handful of tranquilizers. I had been using those pills like candy ever since I found out about my wife's affair. They were the only thing keeping me from losing control. I noticed Carol in the family room, pouring another drink. She finished the glass and was still in the little black dress I had given her earlier that evening. I couldn't help but think how great she looked, but when she saw me, she quickly turned away. Despite knowing the conversation was coming, it hit me like a shock to the chest. Pretending to read a book, I watched as she finally came in. Carol stood silently for about 2 minutes before trying to make small talk. "Gregory, is that a good book?" When she used my full name and looked at her feet rather than me, I knew the end of our marriage was near. I had been preparing for this moment for nearly 2 weeks and hoped I could stay on script. I marked my page, closed the book, and said, "Not as good as our marriage. So, what's on the mind of the woman I love more each day? Are you finally going to tell me what's troubling your heart?" I saw tears start to form in her eyes. "What's wrong, my love?" I pretended to be concerned. "I'm so worried about you." I took her hands into mine. By now, she was crying. "Did the doctor give you bad news?" I asked. "No," she said. Her response loud enough to fill the room. "Is it your mom? Is she okay?" I asked, but she shook her head. "Your dad? Is he all right?" I trailed off as she shook her head again. "I'm fine. Everyone's fine." "No, it's something else." I stood up and pulled out the matching chair from under the octagon-shaped coffee table, then invited her to sit. Once she was seated, I said, "I'll be right back." She looked puzzled. "I'll only be a couple of minutes. I need to get something from upstairs." I went to my study, grabbed my briefcase and laptop from the safe, and returned. Carol was still sitting at the table with her hands folded. Her eyes were red and swollen. Without a word, I set my bag on the floor beside my chair and cleared the pieces from the chessboard. The sound of them hitting the wooden floor was loud. Carol looked confused as she watched. I sat down, opened my computer, and began typing. "What are you doing?" she asked. I placed a finger to my lips and whispered, "Almost done." The soft clicks of the keyboard and her heavy breathing were the only sounds in the room. After a few minutes, I closed the laptop and said, "All done. So, my dear wife, what's been weighing on you?" "It's hard for me to begin," she said, crying even harder. I handed her my handkerchief, and she finally managed to whisper, "I don't want to hurt you. You've been the perfect husband." I didn't respond. "You are, Gregory. You know I love you." "And I love you," I said, squeezing her hands. "That's what makes this so hard," she replied. "Telling you I love you?" I asked. "No, that's easy. I love you, Gregory, but I'm no longer in love with you. There, I've said it." Carol buried her face in her hands, mumbling, "I don't know how it happened." It almost broke me, but I stayed silent. I watched her lower her head in shame. Carol finally spoke. We've been together since high school. It's always been Greg and Carol. I need time to be myself, not just half of us. So you're no longer in love with me because people see us as a happy couple? I asked. No, you're misunderstanding, she replied. You said you're no longer in love with me. You'll need to do a lot better explaining what that means. You wouldn't understand. You're a successful businessman, and I'm suffocating in your shadow, she answered. You have a great job, but this isn't about my job. Carol appeared like a child sulking as I waited for a moment, at least a minute, before asking if she had found a marriage counselor for us to see. That's not exactly what I was thinking, she replied. That leaves divorce, I answered. No, Greg, you're misunderstanding. I want this for us to make us a stronger couple, she said. Then pray tell, what exactly are you thinking? I asked. Carol's voice softened, becoming almost timid. I was thinking we could try a trial separation, she suggested. A trial separation? My voice echoed through the room. Carol leaned back in her chair. Wait, let me explain, she said. I clenched my fists. Please do. Amy from work and her husband were going through something similar, she began, but I interrupted. What problem is that exactly? I reminded her. I told you she lost her identity. Isn't that what marriage is about? Two becoming one. Gregory, she started to say something, but I cut her off, asking, how long do you expect this little experiment of yours to last? Well, she continued, Amy said that after a couple of months, they tried dating again, and now they're thinking about getting back together. Dating while you're on this leave of absence? Do you intend to date, or have you already found someone? I asked. No, I told you I love you. I'm not looking to replace you. I just need some time alone to figure things out, she responded. That doesn't answer my question, I retorted. Where do you plan to live after you move out? A heavy silence followed. I was hoping you'd find me an apartment nearby. It's safer for a man on his own than a woman, she said. I laughed. That's never going to happen. Not now or ever. Please, Gregory, don't be unreasonable. I'm trying to strengthen our marriage, she pleaded. Stronger by walking away from your commitment? Stronger by breaking your promises in sickness and in health, for richer or poor? I countered. Stop me when any of this sounds familiar. Oh, Gregory, you're looking at it all wrong. We'll get back together, I promise, she replied. We already know what your promises are worth, I roared. Oh, Gregory, please don't say that, she whispered, her voice trailing off. What exactly happened to make you so unhappy with our marriage? I asked. It wasn't one big thing. It was a lot of little things. Like going to the country club and having the valet refer to me as Mrs. Eaton, she said. You're upset because a minimum wage valet at the country club you just had to join has good manners? I questioned. No, it's more than that. It's 100 little things I can't even recall, she said, pausing for a moment, waiting for me to respond. But I remained silent. Gregory, I can't explain why it happened. It just did, she admitted. For what felt like an eternity, neither of us spoke. I finally broke the silence, opening my briefcase and pulling out 2 legal-sized file folders. I placed them on the table, opened my laptop, and displayed a photograph. Is this why it happened? I asked, turning the screen so Carol could see a picture of her walking hand in hand with her lover into a business suite hotel. The next image was of my unfaithful wife breaking our wedding vows. Every 30 seconds, a new picture appeared. Her face drained of color, and she fainted, slumping in her chair. I waited a few minutes, then brought her a glass of ice water, helping her sip it. She looked both confused and terrified as each new photo showed up. She glanced at the images, her body stiffening. How long have you known? She asked, her voice shaking. Do you mean, how long have I known that the woman who swore before God and man to forsake all others had betrayed me long enough to prepare this? I slid a copy of the dissolution of marriage papers toward her. Carol, our marriage is over. Sign this so I can move on with my life, I said. She gripped the file, as though trying to crush it, her lips moving as she read the complaint, which cited adultery as the reason for the separation. Attached were 24 color photos marked as Exhibit B. When Carol reached them, she screamed, "Oh God, no!" She began pounding on the table with both fists, crying out in despair, her words unintelligible. I felt no satisfaction as I watched the woman I had once loved come to the painful realization that she had destroyed our marriage. As the weight of our ending consumed her, she seemed to shrink, fading into a hollow version of herself. I couldn't help but wonder if she had been naive enough to think I would ever accept her absurd separation. With each new image that flashed by, her wailing became louder, her grief reaching a fevered pitch. I observed in repulsion, feeling thankful I had taken nearly an overdose of sedatives to steal away my spirit for this moment. Otherwise, I might have faltered in my determination to stay truthful. Honestly, I would have preferred death over enduring this, though the prescription bottle was now empty. Carol collapsed to the floor, her hands reaching for my right ankle. She whispered a single word, "Please." I fought against the urge to crush her fingers under my foot. Instead, I moved my chair away from her, knowing well how the story would conclude. Like her, I too was in a state of shock, so I shut my eyes and tried to convince myself this was a horrific nightmare, a bad dream I needed to escape from. But when I opened my eyes, the nightmare continued. The demon before me still drew breath into her cold chest. The doorbell rang, pulling me back into the present. I turned and muttered, "I'll be right back." Two men entered the foyer, carrying boxes. After a brief exchange, they headed toward the master bedroom's packed walk-in closet. It cost a fortune to have two movers on standby to pack up all my wife's belongings, but it was worth every cent. Carol lifted her head, managing to gasp, "Who are they?" "If you refer to Exhibit A, our prenup states that if you're unfaithful, you lose everything, including this house. So, to answer your question, they're from Reliable Moving and Storage. They're packing up all your things. I've already secured a mini warehouse for you, paid for the first and last month's rent. You'll be out of here tonight." Carol began wailing. "I can't believe this is happening." She curled into a ball, sobbing uncontrollably. "What exactly did you think would happen when you were having an affair with your boss?" I asked. "Oh, Greg, I didn't mean to. Can I at least explain?" "It doesn't matter. You're a liar and a cheater. There are a few things you should know. The lease for your BMW is under the company name. I've taken the keys from your purse because they'll pick it up tomorrow morning. All your credit cards have been canceled, and your cell phone will be shut off first thing in the morning. Your name has been removed from all our bank accounts, and you'll never have to worry about anyone at the country club respecting you again." My cell phone rang. I checked the caller ID and answered, "Is it done?" Moments later, I said, "Thank you. I'll be expecting your report. I thought you might like to know that your boyfriend's wife, who's 8 months pregnant, kicked him out after my private investigator showed her these pictures." I turned the monitor so she could see more of the sordid affair. "I told you he was a player the first time I met him, but you called me foolish." That word, foolish, still burned in my soul. 2 weeks later, he was with you. You lasted 2 weeks before. No need to finish. I've been informed his wife swore she'd divorce him if he cheated again. Did he forget to tell you you're the third woman she's caught him with? So, he's all yours now. At least you won't have to worry about living alone. I wish you both a happy life, until he cheats on you, too." Carol's phone rang. "Let me guess. Lover boy calling to share the good news. He's all yours." I grabbed the phone off the coffee table and smashed it onto the floor, stopping the ringing. Carol's face twisted in horror. "You really thought this through, didn't you?" she said. "Well, guess what? I've done a lot of thinking, too. Tomorrow morning, my lawyer will visit your employer. We've gone through your employee handbook, and you should expect to be fired, along with your boyfriend, for moral turpitude. I wonder if they pay unemployment to dishonest, cheating women." The doorbell rang again. "I'll be right back." Carol stood frozen, her mouth agape, making strange noises that weren't quite words. I returned with an elderly man in a gray suit. "This is Mr. Jackson. He's a notary public here to notarize your signature on the divorce papers. The movers will witness it." She finally asked, "What happens if I refuse to sign?" I hit the send key on my phone. "Then everyone you know, family, friends, co-workers, church members, the women at the club will receive an email with tons of pictures exposing your infidelity. There are even a few short videos. Is there anything I could say to make you change your mind? She asked. You've been involved with your boss for at least 6 weeks. You tried to convince me to leave so you could be with him in our bed. You can't be so foolish to think I would keep a lying, cheating woman as my wife. Carol appeared like a hollow shell. If you had told me the truth tonight, I would have tried anything to save our marriage. I gave you every chance, but you lied. You betrayed me. You betrayed us. I despise you more than anyone I've ever known, and I'm frightened by how badly I want to hurt you. My hands trembled with anger. But I'll tell you what. Until 6 weeks ago, you were everything I dreamed of. You were my soulmate, the reason I lived, and you destroyed that in me. Our state is a no-fault divorce state, but I have another set of papers citing irreconcilable differences. Sign these now and get out of my house before I lose control. I promise I won't tell anyone the truth. Thank you. That's more than I deserve, she replied. 5 minutes later, her signature was witnessed and sealed, marking the end of the first half of my life. Carol stood at the end of the driveway, waiting for a cab to take her to the Business Suites motel on the interstate. I'd booked her usual suite. I wondered if she'd see the irony in that. 2 years have passed, and I never broke my promise to keep this secret, until now. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a turn you didn't foresee? I'd love to hear your thoughts, so share them in the comments below. Let's start a conversation. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. If you're new here or haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join. I bring fresh, captivating stories every day, so click subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.